What if everything that drives you crazy about your child, the selfishness, the meltdowns, the it's not fairs, the need to be the center of everything, what if none of that is a sign that something is wrong with them? What if it's actually right? Modern parenting spends a lot of energy diagnosing what's wrong with our children. Labels, therapists, interventions, and some of these things are genuinely needed. But ancient wisdom started from a completely different place. Not what's broken, but what's natural. And from that understanding came a way of raising children that actually worked. Today we're going into the heart of it. The nature of the child, the difference between individuality and individualism, and the most powerful reframe I've ever encountered. Victim versus agent. Welcome back to our Raising Leaders episodes. My name is Efrat Amira. If you missed episode 1, we talked about why overprotecting our children is actually making them more fragile, and what the mountain guide model looks like instead. You can find the link to that episode in the description. Today we go deeper, because before we become better guides for our children, we need to understand what we're actually working with. Modern parenting culture was deeply shaped by 18th century philosopher named Jean-Jacques Rousseau. His core idea was that children were born inherently good, innocent, pure, naturally inclined to develop well, and that society corrupts them. This idea has become so embedded in how we parent that we don't even notice it anymore. It shows up as, don't interfere with their natural development. Don't impose your values. Let them find their own path. Protect their inner self from being shaped by outside forces. It sounds beautiful, and parts of it are true. But ancient Jewish wisdom understood something more nuanced and more honest. The ancient view is that children are born whole. Yes, they have inherent worth, an inner spark, enormous potential. That is absolutely true. But they are also born self-centered, not in a moral sense, not because they are bad, but because a newborn has to be self-centered. They cannot communicate, rather through needs. Everything must revolve around them for survival. The question is, what happens if that self-centeredness is never guided? Think about an unattended garden. You've seen one, wildly grown, thick with weeds, no structure, and ironically, no fruit. Not because the garden is bad, but because a garden without cultivation cannot reach its potential. The cultivated garden doesn't mean controlling every inch. It means pruning, shaping, creating conditions for the good things to grow. That is the parent's role, active guidance, not passive observation. When we believe children are born perfectly good and society corrupts them, our job as parents become to protect them from being shaped, remove friction, accommodate, let them lead. When we understand that children are born whole but self-centered with immense potential that needs to be revealed, our job becomes completely different. Now we are guides, sculptors, teachers. We are here to help them become what they already have inside of them. This isn't a harsh view of children. It's actually a much more helpful one, because it says the raw material is magnificent and we have a real meaningful role in helping it emerge. A parent who sees their child's selfishness and thinks something is wrong will feel helpless and ashamed. A parent who sees the same selfishness and thinks this is the natural starting point, now let's help them grow past it, has power and direction. Think about your child's most difficult trait right now, the one that exhausts you the most. Can you see it as raw material, as something that's there to be shaped, not something that's broken? Drop it in the comments below. I genuinely read everyone. And if that question is stirring something within you, if you feel like your child has a struggle that you haven't been able to crack yet, something that keeps showing up no matter what you try, I want to invite you to go deeper with me. I'm running a 4-week online workshop called From Challenge to Calling. It's built on this exact idea, that your child's deepest struggle isn't a flaw, it's a force. Jewish wisdom teaches that every child comes with a specific challenge that is uniquely theirs. And when we learn to understand it, we can help them transform it into their greatest gift. If you want to join me for that, you can find the link in the description. We live in a deeply individualistic culture. And on the surface, that sounds fine, even good. Of course, we want our children to have a strong sense of self. Of course, we want them to know their worth. But But there is a critical distinction that Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, one of the greatest modern thinkers, drew in his work on leadership. The difference between individuality and individualism. And once you understand it, you'll see how much our current culture has collapsed the two. Individuality means I'm a unique, irreplaceable person with specific gifts and a specific contribution to make. My uniqueness matters because it serves something that is larger than myself. I'm a valued member of the group. Individualism, on the other hand, means my freedom is all that matters. I am accountable only to myself. I don't need a group. I don't owe anyone anything. Individuality says I matter as part of a whole. Individualism says I am the whole. When we raise children in pure individualism, when we tell them constantly that their feelings are paramount, that their wants are the priority, that they should do always what feels right for them, we are accidentally raising children who are deeply, chronically lonely, because humans are not designed to live as isolated centers of the universe. A child who has been raised to see themselves as the center of the family, where every plan revolves around them, every emotion is accommodated, every discomfort is removed, that child becomes emotionally fragile in a very specific way. When the world doesn't rotate around them, and it won't, they fall apart. A single criticism feels like a personal attack. Not being included feels like a catastrophe because their entire emotional stability has been built on external validation that was never sustainable. But a child raised with a sense of individuality, who knows that they are unique and a part of something bigger. That child has a stable inner core. Their worth doesn't depend on whether they were invited to the party. Their identity doesn't collapse when they get a bad grade. Teaching the child modesty, that they are not the center of the universe, is not diminishing them. It is protecting them. A child who isn't in the center isn't crushed when the world doesn't rotate around them. Here's a question worth sitting with this week. In your home, is your family organized around your children, or do your children participate in a family organized around shared values? There is no shame in the answer. Most of us started in one place and are finding our way to the other. Tell me where you are in the comments. So we've shifted how we see the nature of the child. We've shifted how we see their place in the family. Now comes the third shift. And this one is about what we teach our children to believe about themselves when things get hard. This one might be the most practical of all. Think about how your child responds when something doesn't go their way. Do they ask, why is this happening to me? Or do they ask, what can I do about it? The first response is the victim posture. The second is the agent posture. Modern parenting culture, with all its good intentions, has been accidentally training children into victim thinking. When we explain away every difficulty with circumstances, he's tired, she's sensitive, he has ADHD, he's going through a hard time, we are teaching children that their behavior is a product of what is happening to them. Ancient wisdom said the opposite. Behavior is always a choice. Viktor Frankl, and this comes directly from his experience surviving the Holocaust, wrote that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our freedom and our power to choose. Circumstances are the weather. Behavior is the steering. We cannot always control the storm. How we feel, what happens to us, the circumstances we're born into, but we always control the ship. Our thoughts, our words, and our actions. When we teach this to our children, we are not minimizing their pain. We are not saying just get over it. We are saying you are more powerful than your circumstances. You have a choice here. Let me show you. That is the essence of raising a leader. Practically, this means we stop explaining away our children's behavior and start asking different questions. Instead of, he was just tired, that's why he hit his brother, we say, even when we're tired, we don't hit. What could you have done differently? Instead of, she's just sensitive, she can't help it, we say, I know your feelings are big, and you can still choose how to act. Let's figure out a better way for next time. Instead of organizing the world around our children's emotional state, we teach them to navigate the world with their emotional state. We are not dismissing their feelings. We are validating them and holding the standard. I see you. I believe you can do better. Both things are true. If you understand that your child always has a choice, even when they don't know it yet, how does that change the way you see your role in those difficult moments? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We've covered so much ground today: the nature of the child, individuality versus individualism, victim versus agent. But there's one more piece that ties it all together, and it might be the most countercultural idea in this entire series. It's about what actually creates well-being, and the answer ancient wisdom gives is almost exactly the opposite of our cultural beliefs. Here's a thread running through everything we talked about today. The nature of the child reminds us our kids have immense potential, and they need active guidance to reach it. They don't grow on their own any more than a garden does. Individuality versus individualism reminds us we want to raise children who know their worth as part of something bigger than themselves. That is what creates real confidence. Victim versus agent reminds us we are not raising children who are at the mercy of life. We are raising children who take the helm of their own lives. These three shifts together, they form the foundation of raising a leader. Share this with a parent who needs a new framework, not more tips, but a whole new lens. And subscribe, because episode 3 is where we bring it all together. What ancient wisdom says is the actual root of mental health, and it's not what most people think. Here's a question I'll leave you with. What if your child's happiness has almost nothing to do with how much you give them, and everything to do with how much you ask of them? You will find the answer in episode 3. Don't miss it. And if you haven't yet seen episode 1, where we talk about why overprotective parenting is actually making our kids more fragile and what the mountain guide model looks like instead, the link is right here.